We begin tonight with breaking news. NRA Chief Executive Wayne LaPierre says President Trump today assured him that universal background checks are off the table. The NRA tweeted the development. President Trump had sent clear signals on the issue earlier in the day. President Trump saying that he and the Republican Party are very strong on the Second Amendment.
The Democrats would, I think they'd give up the Second Amendment. And the people that, a lot of the people that put me where I am are strong believers in the Second Amendment, and I am also. And we have to be very careful about that. You know, they call it the slippery slope, and all of a sudden everything gets taken away. We're not going to let that happen.
And joining us tonight, former congressman, former chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, also best-selling author and Fox Business contributor. Jason, you just heard the president say strong on the Second Amendment. Your thoughts about the president's position, that of the Republican Party?
No, I think the president is spot on. He understands this issue. His son is an avid shooter. Most of the complaints you get from people, not all of them, but most of the complaints you get from people are people that aren't familiar with weapons. I happen to have 5. I'm a concealed carry permit holder. Most people go through background checks when they go to purchase a gun. And I don't think as you look at these mass shootings that any of those changes that the Democrats are saying one more law was going to suddenly change things. There are things that we can do, but this so-called universal background check, I don't think is one of them.
It is. I agree with you 100%. And the reality is that lawful purchases at gun shops require a background check. What we are experiencing,
That's right.
What we are experiencing in every instance, as you alluded, is someone, a family member, a counselor at a high school, not reporting people who are troubled, who are in dire need of help. And we can, there's an awful and tragic list of those circumstances. But none of this braying of, taking away Second Amendment rights of Americans would address the issue at all.
Yeah, they usually go after the suspicionless people, the honest, hardworking Americans who maybe like hunting or they want to carry a weapon to feel more safe. They put more impediments upon them. What they should do, what I hope the president does embrace, what I advocate, is don't allow those people that are teenagers, less than 18 years old, who we know are entangled with law, don't expunge their record when they suddenly become 18. Allow law enforcement to look at those people when they suddenly turn 18. I think that would do more than anything, Lou.
And you've got Lindsey Graham, going on about red flag laws, which, is to me just bizarre, and acting as if he is some sort of secondary presidential spokesman, particularly on the Second Amendment, for which he is eminently not qualified. We're getting such nonsense. And the Judiciary Committee in the Senate hasn't done any investigating. It is not focused on any of these issues when it could be taking on the issue of mental health in this country, and instead playing at the margin. And, we never know with Lindsey Graham how fungible that idea or position will be. Let's turn to the constancy of this president on China. Today saying clearly, he is the man who has to turn things around. There is no doubt about that. Even amongst the elites on Wall Street, the left-wing media, and, of course, in politics, they all understand the truth of the president's position. If he doesn't stand here, all could be lost.
I think everybody in their gut understands that China had been ripping us off for a very long time. I think America figured out that they wanted a disruptive and unconventional president, and Donald Trump is about the only personality that I think would have the true guts as president to take this on and win it, not just in the short term, but the long term. And it takes a president like Donald Trump. He's not a resume item. He's not trying to get a cool business card. He doesn't need to go out and make more money after this job. He's already got enough. But he can actually stand firm. And that's what the people that are in the heartland of America understand. They know that. That's why he's doing so well and will continue to thrive.
And it's truly amazing. Even Tom Friedman, the New York Times columnist, hardly a Trump supporter, acknowledging that the president is exactly right, to take this stand, to take this position. Jamie Dimon doing so as well. And yet, still the flirtation with the globalist elite and that suffocating crowd that lead Wall Street, Steve Schwarzman, the list goes on. I won't get into the names. This president standing up to the power, the political power, the economic power of those elites has been, people do not, I think, appreciate how strong he's had to be to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, they're used to having a president who kind of tiptoe through the tulips and don't want to offend anybody. Yet here comes Donald Trump willing to blow down that whole tulip field and say, all right, fellas, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start selling stuff to Taiwan. We are very supportive of what's going on with those protesters in Hong Kong. And you're not going to take advantage of America. So, we're going to put some tariffs on you until you get your act straight. We just want to have fair, balanced trade. I think that's a good winning message.
Yeah, I think it is, too. And I would like to quarrel with you about a word. You called him unconventional. Conventional is Clinton, Bush, Obama. That's conventional. And each one of them failing.
Yeah.
The fact is he's a historic president, Jason. And I don't see why any Republican should hesitate to use the word, because everyone in the Republican Party knows he has done more in 2.5 years than any president in modern history. And he should be credited with that, don't you think?
Yeah, I say it with fondness. I say that he's broken the mold, that if you wanted different results, you had to do it a different way. And America figured that out. They had a plethora of Washington, D.C. insiders running for president, but America rejected all that. They said, no, we want somebody from the business community who could stand up and get done and put America first. A lot of people still don't understand Make America, MAGA, the whole slogan. They don't even get it. Yeah. They still don't get it.
Yeah, and we've, the president, Make America Great Again, something that you would think every American could embrace, but just about half the country is running from it because they don't understand the man, the country, or the times in which we live, or the challenges that face this nation, and they don't care to open their eyes to the reality. Jason Chaffetz, great to have you with us, and I can't wait for your new book. A reminder about Jason's new book, Power Grab, the liberal scheme to undermine Trump, the GOP, and our republic. We recommend it to you highly. And Jason, just an afterthought, is it possible to order early?
Can order early. It's discounted now, and then it'll ship and be available for sale the day after Labor Day, September 3rd. Thanks, Lou.
You betcha, Jason. Good luck with the book.